So far, when it comes to getting smoother at freestyle skateboarding, we have talked about learning your tricks until you can get them to near perfection or satisfaction. We have gone over how to link tricks in a way that makes sense or that we might enjoy. How tricks flow together, thinking about what trick comes next or thinking about where you want to end up in your line. And today I want to talk about what I think kind of is the final piece to freestyling smoother, and it comes in two parts. And the first one is setup time. So while we're walking through our lines and trying to move from trick to trick, I do think there's a lot to be said about how quickly we can flow through our setup. So I think it's best just to illustrate this with an example of what it looks like to take a long time to set up between your tricks and what it looks like to reduce that setup time and move a lot faster. Of course, it takes a really long time to get to the point where you can go quickly from trick to trick to trick, and it might even take years before you come close to what you think is smooth. At least that's been my case. I do think that when I want to optimize for a smoother freestyle line, the first thing I'm thinking about these days is setup time. I don't want to go from one trick to the next and then have to wait while I catch my balance, while I adjust my feet, while I really think about the trick, and while I work up the courage to do the trick. I want to be able to go from one trick to the next trick without a ton of pausing. I don't want to just sit on the tail and fiddle with the nose while I try to muster up the courage to do a double finger flip. And I also don't want to have to reposition my feet and really struggle to catch my balance when I want to try something like a Rengus flip. I really do think that being able to reduce your setup time between tricks makes freestyling look just so smooth and so effortless, so dialed and controlled. So you might want to think of someone like Ethan. Ethan Young has incredible lines where he just goes from trick to trick to trick to trick without really setting up in between, which means that you have to practice the line until you can do that, or at least work up to that skill set to where you get better at landing where you need to be, or you get better at landing more stably. So in this session right here, that's what I was focusing on. I wanted to land on the board with my feet in a pretty optimal zone so that I could go right to the very next trick. And if I want to get really specific, I can. In fact, for this toe side rail up into, I want to say it was a rail flip. I can't quite remember. It was either a rail flip or rail to rail. I tried to actually move my feet, like jump up and move my feet in the air so that I would land with my foot a little bit angled and be able to fire off that rail flip right away. So that was really intentional. I was thinking about that while practicing this line. And when I talk about this, when I think about, reducing setup time and going faster throughout the line, I think the final piece to smoothness, in my opinion, is tempo. Because I don't think that just faster necessarily always makes something look smoother. And I think that tempo is a really great lens for smoothness in freestyle because, one, if you're freestyling in a contest to a really slow song, it might not match the musicality score if you're skating really fast and not in tempo with like the music. They might not mesh really well. There are some skaters who skate really, really quickly. I would say like a little faster and a little more aggressive, someone like Denham Hill. But then Mike Osterman, in my opinion, is often skating a little bit slower, but he is nonetheless incredibly smooth with all of his freestyle lines, which is why I don't think that speed is the only way to look smooth when you're freestyling. And I think that even when you're a newer freestyler, you don't have to be afraid that you're skating too slow. You can set a tempo or have a pace in your mind and just slowly, but in the same tempo, try your lines. Try to go from one trick to one trick in a nice, even tempo. So I also filmed a little bit of an example here, a line that I rush and stop, rush and stop, rush and stop through. And then the line again, but just in a constant, consistent, slower tempo. And anybody is totally free to disagree with me. I don't think that my opinion is correct or the only one that's valid. I think that there's definitely going to be styles, preferences, and tastes in skateboarding, particularly freestyle, where I think our tastes and preferences might be a little bit wider than other niches of skateboarding. So this is just my opinion. This is just what I think makes freestyle look smoother. And I do think that reducing your setup time, going between tricks, but then also kind of keeping in mind a pace or a tempo to skate at or to perform your lines at, so that it just looks smoother as you move through the line. You're not hesitating, you're not pausing, you're not setting up your feet over and over and over again, and you're also not rushing or waiting. You're just going through your tricks at kind of an even pace. And I think that you can do that at any level, at any preference, and in any style. And that's why I like this particular framing of smoothness. But like I said, that's just my opinion. I don't always do this. When I got that Rangus flip for the very first time the other day, I obviously was not concerned that I had a very long setup time. I was just happy that I got the flip. You know, where every line is a little bit different. Sometimes we're working on the trick, sometimes we're working on the flow throughout a line of tricks, and sometimes we just want to get our feet back on the board. There's no right answer in my opinion. These are just the things that I think about, and as I progress as a freestyler, as I get better, as I move from barely landing my tricks to more consistently landing my tricks and sometimes getting a decent, harder trick variation, I now start to think about, well, how can I make those tricks that I'm doing well look better? Which is why this summer I've thought a lot about what it takes to freestyle smoother, because I do want to get to the point where when I'm out on my skateboard, it looks kind of effortless, and it might take me the next 10 years, 20 years to get there. Who knows what I'll be doing in 20 years, but I'm okay with that, and I'm ready to play that long game. I'm excited for it. I want to keep skating in the foreseeable future and beyond. So these are kind of the smaller details and nuances that I've been thinking about now as I try to improve my freestyle, because I want to skate better. And I think that focusing on some of these smaller details, not just landing the tricks, but landing them well and trying to improve my fluidity as I move through my tricks, that's been a big goal of mine this summer. So this session was just that, just me trying to make it through my lines smoother, faster, at a set tempo, and it was actually a lot of fun. And I do hope that it was as much fun to watch this video as it was for me to make it, and I hope you're having a good day.